The moment I read that strange text message, a chill ran down my spine. Suddenly, I feel like this villainess has some game. I'm starting to worry about my girl, the heroine. Villainous? Heroine? It sounded like something out of a cheap web novel. But somehow, deep in my gut, I knew it wasn't a joke. Something was about to happen. Aria, darling, we trust Jacob. He's not that kind of person, my mother said gently, tugging at my sleeve as if to pull me back to reason. But I didn't let go of the prenuptial agreement in my hand. The crisp paper felt like a shield between me and the disaster the message had warned me about. Across from me, Jacob's expression had turned to ice. It seems you don't have much faith in me, Aria. In that case, his jaw tightened. Perhaps we should postpone the engagement party. Without another word, he turned and walked away. Tall, composed, and utterly unreadable. His figure disappeared down the marble hallway, and only then did I let out the breath I'd been holding. Losing Jacob would be unfortunate. Losing $5 billion worth of Manhattan real estate tied to this engagement? Now that would be tragic. When we returned home, my parents' disapproval came swiftly. Do you have any idea what you've done? My father snapped. The engagement party is in 3 days. Every major name in New York has already received an invitation. Tonight's dinner with the Hales had been meant to finalize wedding details. Now, instead, I had thrown everything into chaos. A postponement this late would trigger endless gossip, but that was still better than the alternative. Because if the message was right, something far worse was coming. A 5-year-old boy would appear at that party, a boy who looked exactly like Jacob Hale, a boy who would call him Daddy. Dad, Mom, I said finally, my tone steady. You've met more people in your lifetime than I could ever count. Tell me, how many men with Jacob Hale's money and influence are truly saints? Even if he is one now, that's no guarantee for the future. My words hung in the air. I saw the hesitation flicker across their faces. Finally, they relented. They agreed to call the Hales and say I wasn't feeling well. The engagement would be postponed for a month. A month was fine. It would give me time to confirm if the so-called heroine in that text was real. As an apology to our would-be guests, the engagement party was rebranded at the last minute. 3 days later, the same grand ballroom hosted a Bennett Corporation gala, celebrating our successful bid to develop the city's new Central Plaza project. The elite of New York still came, champagne glasses in hand, diamonds flashing, rumors whispering. And of course, the Hales were on the guest list. As I stepped out of my car, a familiar flicker of glowing text appeared before my eyes again, hanging in the air like an invisible narrator's voice. Here we go. The first meeting between the heroine and the villainess. Can't wait for the classic hero saves the damsel scene. The cute little munchkin is here to help Mommy find Daddy. I wonder if the villainess will regret postponing the engagement when she sees them. She lost her only chance to lock the hero down, ha ha ha. My pulse quickened. Was this real? Was I losing my mind? My gaze swept the glittering room, searching for a small child. But instead, I saw Jacob walking toward me through the crowd. He looked devastatingly composed in his black suit, every movement precise, confident. As you requested, he said quietly. I'll have the prenuptial agreement notarized and sent to you soon. The engagement will proceed as planned, 1 month from now. He tilted his head, studying me with that cool curiosity I used to mistake for affection. But I'm intrigued, Aria. Who's been giving you advice lately? I almost laughed. If I told you it was a system message calling me a villainess, you'd have me committed. Instead, I smiled lightly. Who can say no to a good insurance policy? If I was going to play the villainess, I might as well be one with leverage, with a $15 billion penalty clause and a $6 billion engagement settlement at stake. I could afford to be careful. I could afford to be anyone I needed to be. Then came the commotion. A woman in a plain white dress stumbled through the entrance, clutching her bag, panic in her wide eyes. Excuse me, have you seen my son? He's 5 years old. She grabbed one of my family's security guards, who frowned and tried to escort her out. Ma'am, this is a private event. You can't be here. No, please, she cried. My son is missing. I have to find him. Wait by the door, miss. If we find a child... But I'm his mother. I have to go in. Let me go or I'll call the police. Her voice cracked into a desperate sob. The struggle ended with a sharp cry as she fell, scraping her knee on the marble floor. A thin line of blood trailed down her pale skin. Then, out of nowhere, a small boy dashed out from behind the flower arrangements and threw himself at the guard, shouting, "Don't you bully my mommy!" Gasps filled the room. The woman clutched the child tightly to her chest, crying in relief. Together they made the perfect picture, fragile, innocent, pitiable. And as I stared at them, I felt that same invisible text flash before my eyes again. Like master, like servant. No surprise a dog raised by her would be so aggressive. A grown man bullying a single mother and her child. His conscience must have been eaten by a dog. The message was mocking me, because I suddenly realized who she was. The heroine had arrived, and if the story was following its script, I was standing right in front of my replacement. Just wait. When the villainess's family goes bankrupt, we'll see how arrogant these servants are. I saw the message appear in front of me once again. Apparently, even in high society, gossip never takes a night off. Jacob, standing beside me in his perfectly tailored suit, frowned as a commotion broke out near the entrance of the Bennett estate ballroom. His expression was the picture of restrained irritation, the kind he usually reserved for stock market crashes or bad press. "It seems the security at the Bennett estate is a bit lacking," he murmured, his voice cold and clipped. "And your staff's professionalism could use some work." I followed his gaze, just in time to see a young woman stumble and fall, clutching a little boy. Her dress was plain, not the type anyone at this gala would wear. Definitely not one of our guests. And then Jacob, the man famous for keeping people at arm's length, did something completely out of character. He stepped forward, offered her his hand. "Get up," he said curtly. "I'll have someone take you to the hospital." The woman froze. Her eyes widened like she'd seen a ghost. Then, instead of taking his hand, she grabbed the little boy's arm and turned to run. But before she could flee, "Daddy!" The boy's voice rang out across the ballroom, loud and clear. Every head turned, every conversation stopped. I felt my heart skip a beat, not because of jealousy, but because of the pure absurdity of it. The woman's eyes filled with panic as she scooped the boy up and bolted through the exit, vanishing into the night before anyone could stop her. My father appeared at my side, his face dark. "What was that about?" he whispered. I shrugged, fighting the urge to laugh at the sheer drama of it all. "I have no idea. But did you hear? The kid called Jacob Daddy. See, Dad? I told you the prenup was a good idea." Our voices carried a little too far, apparently, because the nearby guests suddenly went quiet. The cheerful buzz of the engagement celebration dissolved into uneasy murmurs. Later that night, the Hales came over, faces pale, trying to salvage what was left of their dignity. "Aria, there must be some misunderstanding," Mrs. Hale said, wringing her hands. Jacob looked like thunder. "I can't possibly have a son," he said, voice sharp and defensive. "For that woman to show up now at this exact moment, she's clearly after something." That's when the strange floating text appeared again in front of me. "This isn't how it's supposed to go. Shouldn't the hero have seen the resemblance, abandoned the villainess, and run after the heroine? And the villainess is way too calm. Wasn't she supposed to slap the heroine or throw wine in her face?" I blinked, keeping my expression composed. So that was the heroine? Interesting. Don't worry, everyone. Once the heroine starts working at the hero's company, the plot should get back on track. "Oh, so she's going to work at Hale Industries?" I tilted my head, studying Jacob's stiff posture. "Are you sure you don't want to get a paternity test first?" I asked lightly. What if he really is the result of a wild night you don't remember? A vein pulsed in his temple. He seized my wrist, his grip tight. "Aria," he hissed. "I don't know who's been whispering poison in your ear, but listen to me. Other than you, I've never touched another woman. I'll find her and get to the bottom of this. Then, our engagement will proceed as planned." I smiled sweetly. "Fine by me. Let's see if you can get past hiring the heroine first." Then I patted his hand as if soothing a child. "Don't get so worked up. It's only $15 billion. You can F. Bennett the scandal. As I walked away, I caught a glimpse of him tugging at his tie like it was choking him. For someone so composed, Jacob Hale looked seconds away from smashing something expensive. The following weeks were entertaining. My parents stopped bringing up the engagement. Rumors spread through every social circle like wildfire, about Jacob, about the mysterious woman, and about that adorable little boy who called him Daddy. When I walked into Hale Industries for a progress meeting, the whispers followed me all the way to the boardroom. Did you hear? Mr. Hale has a secret son. I knew it! That's why the engagement was postponed. Miss Bennett doesn't look heartbroken to me. They weren't wrong. I wasn't heartbroken, just curious. Then I saw the head of HR leading a group of new hires past the glass walls of the conference room. And there she was, the woman from the gala, dressed in white again, eyes full of nervous excitement. Here for an interview. Oh, this was going to be good. I was about to step out for a better look when someone blocked my path, tall, tense, and unmistakably irritated. Jacob, where are you going? He asked, his tone sharp. Oh, nowhere, I replied smoothly. Just saw someone I thought I knew. He followed my gaze, but the heroine was already gone. All he saw was a handsome young man holding 2 coffees and smiling politely. Jacob's expression darkened instantly. You know, he said in a dangerously quiet voice, your eyes used to only be for me. What's this? Developed a new taste recently? I wanted to tell him he was being ridiculous, that I'd been looking at the baby mama, not the barista-looking Yale graduate. But before I could, he snapped at his assistant. Who is that? A new recruit from Yale, sir. Transfer him to the regional office in Stamford. Then Jacob turned back to me with a smirk that didn't reach his eyes. Word of advice, Aria. Be careful with pretty boys. Most of them are after your money. I stared at him incredulous. What? After the meeting, he insisted on walking me out. As we passed through the open office, I spotted the same Yale graduate packing up his desk, already reassigned, poor thing. I stopped. A top graduate from Yale and you're sending him away? That seems wasteful. If you don't want him, I'll take him. He can work for me at Bennett. Jacob slammed his hand against a nearby cubicle partition, the sound echoing across the floor. Aria, he said lowly, his jaw tight. Our engagement is postponed, not cancelled. The entire floor froze. You could hear keyboards stop mid-click. Then a timid voice spoke up. Mr. Hale, my files. I glanced down. Oh, what a coincidence. The desk Jacob had slammed was the heroine's. His hand rested right on top of her paperwork. He followed my gaze, and his face drained of color. What is she doing here? He barked. His assistant blanched. She must have started today, sir. The floating text flickered wildly again. Ah, here it is. Go on, hero. Break off the engagement and bring the heroine home. Something's wrong. Why is the hero glaring like he wants to strangle her? Relax, that's just how enemies to lovers starts. I couldn't help but smirk. Oh, this story was getting interesting. Can I just say, this villainess has way too much screen time? Can she just get lost already? That was the first line of floating text I saw that morning, before the chaos even began. When I looked up, I found the so-called heroine, Selena Hart, staring at Jacob like she'd seen a ghost. Her face went pale, lips trembling. Then, without warning, she tried to bolt. Unfortunately for her, panic and stilettos don't mix well. She tripped over her chair and landed right at my feet in an undignified heap. I blinked, took one step back. Was this some kind of scam? Did she plan this fall for sympathy points? Celine pushed herself up, her hands shaking. I'm sorry, she stammered, tears welling in her eyes. I didn't know this was your company. I'll leave right now. Before she could even move, Jacob grabbed her arm. His tone was sharp, controlled, and frighteningly cold. Wait, you're not going anywhere until you explain yourself. The office went silent. All eyes were on them. Celine's lips quivered. I have nothing to say. Jacob let out a humorless laugh. The Bennett estate is on a private mountain road. You can't just walk up there. So how did you get in? And that boy, where did you hire him? Her eyes widened. Her fingers clenched into fists. but she stayed quiet. Then, before anyone could speak again, a high-pitched voice echoed through the office. "Bad Daddy!" Everyone turned. A little boy came sprinting out from behind a pillar and threw himself at Jacob's leg, hitting it with tiny fists. "You're bullying Mommy because of that bad woman. You don't deserve to be my daddy." I froze. Even under the harsh fluorescent lights, there was no mistaking it. The boy looked exactly like Jacob. Same gray eyes, same stubborn jawline. It was like someone had shrunk him in the wash. The whispers started instantly. "Oh my God, look at him. He's a miniature Mr. Hale. Even if it's not his kid, they have to be related, right?" Jacob's usual calm shattered for a second. I caught the flicker of doubt in his eyes. Then, without saying another word, he took Celine and the boy by the arm and started walking toward the exit. "Come with me," he said through clenched teeth. "We're going to settle this today, in front of both families." Before I could politely excuse myself from that circus, he wrapped an arm around my waist and practically dragged me into the car with them. I sighed. "Really, Jacob? I didn't realize I was part of your investigation team." He didn't reply. His jaw was locked, his knuckles white. By the time we reached the Hales' Park Avenue penthouse, both our families were already waiting. My parents, looking mortified, and the Hales, looking ready to sue God himself for defamation. In the car, Celine had introduced herself quietly. "My name is Celine Hart," she said, voice trembling. "This is my son Jamie." According to her, she only took the job at Hale Industries to build a better life for her son. She denied knowing Jacob personally, and claimed the boy had simply snuck out of daycare because he was worried she'd be bullied at her new job. Touching, almost believable, except the child had been glaring at me the entire ride. "It's a good thing I came," he said, puffing out his tiny chest. "Otherwise, my mommy would have been eaten alive by a mean woman like you. My mommy is the kindest, nicest person in the world, and I have to protect her." I blinked. "Excuse me?" Was this little gremlin calling me the villain? When we entered the penthouse, the atmosphere was suffocating. Celine stood in front of her son like a shield, her hands trembling but her chin raised. The air crackled with tension as both families stared at them. Finally, Mrs. Hale broke the silence. "Jacob," she said, voice tight, "are you absolutely sure you don't know this woman?" Her husband was pacing nearby, phone glued to his ear. Apparently, someone had leaked a video of the office confrontation online. The internet was now buzzing with headlines about the Ice Prince of Wall Street and his secret child. Someone even made a side-by-side comparison photo, Jacob as a boy and Jamie now. The resemblance was damning. And then the floating text appeared again. "My poor baby's being stared at like animals in a zoo. Why isn't the hero protecting his wife?" He's calculating. If he defends her now, the villainess will go crazy and destroy the heroine's life. "No, look closer. He doesn't look protective. He looks like he wants to strangle her." I glanced at Jacob. Honestly, that last commenter wasn't wrong. He looked furious. His jaw clenched so tightly I could practically hear the grind of his teeth. "Mom," he said through gritted teeth. "You don't believe me either?" The silence stretched, so I decided to be helpful. "Mrs. Hale," I said pleasantly, "there's an easy solution. Just get a paternity test. If the boy turns out to be his, I'll call off the wedding myself." "Aria, don't you dare!" Jacob snapped, rounding on me. I blinked innocently. "What?" "I'm just being logical. I mean, look at that face." I pointed at Jamie, whose wide gray eyes mirrored his. "Are you sure you don't see any resemblance?" Jacob sank back into his seat, face dark, hands trembling slightly. Then, without warning, Celine collapsed to her knees. The sound of her body hitting the marble floor echoed through the penthouse. She pulled Jamie down with her. "I'm so sorry," she sobbed, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I never should have disturbed your lives. It's all my fault. If only I hadn't given birth to him." And before anyone could react, she slapped the boy, hard. Once, twice, again. The sound was sickening. "I told you not to call random men, Daddy. I told you," she cried. "Apologize to the nice lady and gentleman. Right now. or you can forget you ever had a mother." Jamie burst into tears, hiccuping, "I'm sorry, Mommy, I'm sorry." But Celine wasn't finished. She grabbed his ear and twisted until the skin turned purple. That was it for me. I lunged forward, grabbed her wrist, and yanked the child into my arms. "That's enough, Miss Hart," I said, my voice low and cold. "Don't you think you've gone a little too far?" The room fell silent again. Even Jacob looked stunned. I could feel Jamie trembling in my arms, sobbing quietly against my shoulder. His little ear was swollen and red. For the first time that day, I didn't feel like a villainess. I felt human. I didn't expect the heroine to unravel this fast. 1 second she was on her knees, crying prettily with her hair falling in artful waves. The next, she was slapping her own child like she wanted to exorcise him. Jamie was wailing in my arms now, small body trembling, hiccuping through sobs. Yet even in his terror, he still cried for her, for the mother who had just struck him. On the screen in front of me, new messages appeared, overlapping one another like ripples in dirty water. Wait, what's wrong with the heroine? Wasn't she supposed to be a pure, innocent little flower? Why is she hitting her child so hard? Is that really her son? It must be a strategy, pushing them away to gain sympathy, but this is insane. It's like she's been possessed. This is a horror movie. I want my money back. I swear, in the original book, the heroine adored her child. She would have died for him. What changed? I don't care what anyone says. At this moment, the villainess is the only one who looks sane. She's beautiful, calm, and moral. She's the real heroine in my heart. I used to ship the heroine and Jacob, but after this, I can't. I hope Aria takes the male lead and the child away from that psycho. Why is nobody stopping her? This is child abuse. Where's the hero when you need him? Oh my God, is this what karma looks like? The villainess protecting the heroine's son? I love it. Each message flickered briefly before fading, replaced by another wave of judgment, confusion, and disbelief. It was like watching a storm brew across 1,000 unseen faces. And somehow I could see them all, their outrage, their fascination. I tightened my hold on Jamie, glaring down at Celine. "That's enough, Miss Hart," I said, my voice low, steady. "Don't you think you've gone a little too far?" She froze, mid-motion, as if only just realizing the horror of what she'd done. Then, slowly, her eyes filled with tears again, perfectly timed, perfectly tragic. But not once did she look at her child. Her gaze fixed on Jacob instead. "Mr. Hale," she whispered, her voice trembling with theatrical fragility. "I know that night was a mistake. You were drunk. You thought I was someone else. It was my selfish desire that led me to have this child. Please, if you must punish someone, punish me. But don't take Jamie away from me." The air went still. Even Jacob looked like he'd been slapped. His jaw locked, and his hands clenched into fists. Mrs. Hale gasped, one manicured hand pressed against her lips. And just like that, the puzzle snapped into place. So she finally admitted it. Jacob's assistant arrived just then, holding a thick file, Celine Hart's history. The details were too neat. A part-time job at a private club during college. The same club Jacob had visited the night of his bachelor party-turned-business dinner. She had quit the next day, disappeared, and reappeared months later with a growing belly and a new passport. The timeline was damning, and yet something about it didn't sit right with me, because a few nights ago at the gala, Celine had been different, desperate, protective. She'd clawed at security guards to get to her son. That kind of fear wasn't easy to fake. And now, she couldn't even look at the child she had once risked everything to protect. The difference was too stark, too deliberate. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. Celine and Jamie were given a guest suite in the Hale mansion until the paternity test came back. 3 days. That was all it would take to destroy or confirm everything. After they were led away, Mrs. Hale turned to me with visible guilt. "Aria, we never expected any of this," she said softly. "It seems Jacob made a terrible mistake while intoxicated. Regardless, this is our fault. We've wronged you." I smiled faintly. "Once the test confirms he's your grandson, I'll withdraw from the engagement. Business is business, Mrs. Hale. Feelings are separate. A pause. Relief flickered across their faces. But Jacob just stood by the window, staring out at the skyline like he could burn through the glass with sheer willpower. I hesitated before walking over. He didn't turn, even when I reached out and rested a hand on his shoulder. When he finally faced me, his eyes were red. Jacob Hale, cold, untouchable Jacob, actually looked broken. "I'm sorry," he said, and before I could respond, he pulled me into his arms. His scent, sandalwood and clean linen, wrapped around me, oddly grounding. His voice trembled when he spoke again. "Aria, I'm sorry." It was the first time he'd ever apologized. To anyone. For a moment, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "It's fine," I managed. "Jamie's a cute kid." The moment I said it, his hand fell away from my shoulder as if burned. His expression shuddered again, all walls and restraint. "Thank you," he murmured. And just like that, the distance returned. 3 days later, the results arrived. Jamie was, without a doubt, Jacob Hale's biological son. The tabloids exploded. The comments were merciless. Confirmed, CEO Jacob Hale's secret love child. Villainous fiancé betrayed. Public sympathy surges for Celine Hart. Hale Group's stock drops 4% after scandal. Shareholders demand press statement. Fans divided, heroine or manipulator? The system messages that only I could see weren't any kinder. The heroine's popularity dropped by 27%. Viewer loyalty is unstable. The villainess's favorability increased by 63%. Some viewers are switching sides. Warning, the original narrative trajectory is diverging. I didn't know what trajectory they meant, but I had a feeling I wasn't supposed to be the one people rooted for. A week later, the Hales invited us over again, this time to officially dissolve the engagement. When I arrived, Jamie was playing on the rooftop garden, his toy cars scattered across the marble tiles. Celine sat nearby, staring blankly into the distance. Jacob was a few meters away, arms crossed, watching them both. When Jamie tripped and scraped his knee, it wasn't his mother who rushed over, it was Jacob. He scooped the boy up immediately, checking the wound with a tenderness that didn't quite match his stormy expression. His glare shot straight to Celine. "Is this how you watch him? You're always next to him, but never paying attention. If you can't handle it, let the nanny take over." The boy didn't even try to run to his mother. He buried his face in Jacob's shoulder and cried silently. Celine stammered something about him being just energetic, but Jacob didn't answer. More text flickered in front of me, lines of digital whispers. "The heroine used to be such a good mother. What happened to her? Maybe she's just overwhelmed. The Hale house must be intimidating. Still, look at the boy. He clings to his dad now, not her. That's what guilt looks like. She knows she's losing control. No, something's wrong. This isn't just nerves. Her personality is changing." I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the voices fade into static. Because deep down, I already knew what they didn't. This wasn't just a scandal. It was a script. And somewhere, somehow, the script was breaking. And if it kept breaking, someone was going to get erased. Something was wrong. That same uneasy chill ran down my spine again, sharp and deliberate, like a warning whispered directly into my bones. Just like before, just like the text had said, Celine Hart wasn't herself anymore. And the child, the one who spent every waking moment by her side, would have been the first to sense it. The first to see the cracks forming in the person who once swore she'd die to protect him. I turned to Jacob, intending to pull him aside, only to find him already watching her. Celine was kneeling on the marble floor, gathering scattered toys with mechanical precision, her expression distant, vacant. Jacob's gaze wasn't the sharp glare he usually wore. It was wary, analytical. The same suspicion that had taken root in me was clearly blooming in him too. Lunch was quiet, too quiet. The Hales had gone all out. Crystal glasses, polished silver, an elaborate spread that could have fed an army. But under all that luxury, the air was heavy with guilt. Mr. Hale stood first, glass in hand, his voice solemn. "We never imagined something like this could happen," he began. But ultimately, this is Jacob's fault. He made a mistake, and now he must take responsibility. Please rest assured, the settlement we offered won't be withdrawn. It's the least we can do for Aria. She'll always be like a daughter to us." Mrs. Hale nodded, her smile brittle. "Even if the engagement ends, we'll always consider your family part of ours." They were about to drink when I rose to my feet. Every gaze turned toward me. My parents, Jacob's, even Celine's. I smiled, slowly, deliberately. "You know," I said lightly, "when it comes to mistakes, to err is human, isn't it?" A faint spark flashed in Jacob's eyes. Surprise first, then something unreadable. I continued. "Actually, I've had time to think, and I've realized that the years Jacob and I spent together weren't so bad. If I were to break things off, who's to say I'd find a better match?" Jacob's fist clenched under the table. I saw the muscle in his jaw twitch, his composure straining under the weight of whatever he wasn't saying. The room froze. "Aria, does that mean—" Mrs. Hale began, eyes wide with tentative hope. I turned to Celine. She was pretending to feed Jamie, but her hand was trembling so violently that bits of rice were falling onto the floor. "I think," I said, tilting my head, "that since Miss Hart gave birth to Jamie, the Hale family should certainly take responsibility. But that responsibility doesn't necessarily have to come at the expense of Jacob's marriage, does it?" For a heartbeat, no one breathed. Then with a clatter, Celine dropped the spoon. Her lips twitched into a tight smile, but her eyes, those eyes, burned with fury. "What are you implying, Miss Bennett? Are you saying that everything I went through, raising Jamie alone, all the pain, all the humiliation, means nothing?" I met her glare with polite indifference. $10 million, I said, arching a brow. "And a penthouse in the best school district. That should be enough for you and Jamie to live comfortably." To most people, that would have sounded like salvation. But Celine's expression said otherwise. Her hatred was almost palpable. Because what she wanted wasn't comfort, it was conquest. "I should have known," she spat bitterly. "To people like you, people like us are worthless." Then she pushed her chair back, dramatically enough to make sure every eye followed her, and ran from the room sobbing. Theatrics, even now. She left Jamie behind, sitting small and lost in his chair, eyes swollen and red. Mrs. Hale rushed to comfort him, cooing softly, while my parents leaned in toward me, whispering. "What on earth was that, Aria? Is the engagement back on?" "Shh," I whispered. "I'm just going to the powder room." I slipped away before they could question me further. Outside, I followed the faint sound of crying until I reached the garden gazebo. Celine's voice drifted through the air, sharp and furious. "What the hell is going on? System, you told me that as long as I brought the child to the Hale family, I would succeed. So what is this? That villainess, that Aria, is refusing to break the engagement. And Jacob, he's treating her differently. He's not supposed to care." My heart went still. "System?" She was pacing back and forth, her words spilling faster. "Provoke her? Act pitiful? You said that would make him choose me. This isn't working. If I'd known your script was this unreliable, I never would have agreed to come here in the first place." I stood frozen behind the stone wall, her voice echoing in my ears. A system, a script, a heroine who didn't act like herself. It all clicked. This wasn't reality, not fully. This world was something else. And I was the villainess in it. The obstacle meant to fall so the heroine could rise. But if Celine was talking to a system, and I could see the text that no one else could, then maybe, just maybe, I wasn't supposed to follow the script either. I waited until she left before stepping out. The garden was empty now, except for the faint scent of roses and the crunch of gravel beneath my heels. From the shadows across the path, movement caught my eye. Jacob emerged from behind an oak tree. He'd heard everything. Our eyes met, and for a long second, neither of us spoke. Then, almost imperceptibly, we both raised an eyebrow. A silent truce. We didn't have the answers yet, but we had the same enemy. When we returned to the dining room, the atmosphere had shifted. My father looked at his watch pointedly. A 20-minute trip to the powder room? Then his gaze flickered to Jacob. And you were gone just as long." Jacob coughed, avoiding eye contact. I smiled sweetly, looping my arm through his. "Dad, you really must learn the art of seeing everything and saying nothing." My father chuckled. "Oh, then it seems our Jacob isn't quite up to the task." Before he could finish, a loud clang cut through the laughter. The spoon in Celine's hand had fallen onto her plate. She'd returned, face calm but eyes full of venom, feeding Jamie as if nothing had happened. But I saw it. The tremor in her wrist. The faint flicker of panic that crossed her expression when Jacob placed his hand over mine. She knew. The script was slipping. And the villainess, the one who was supposed to lose everything, wasn't following her lines anymore. Something in the air felt wrong again. Celine's voice was trembling when she spoke, but her words were sharp enough to slice through the quiet dining room. "Jamie," she said softly, though her tone was strained, "after you finish eating, say goodbye to your grandparents. Mommy is taking you home to our own house." The clinking of silverware stopped. Everyone froze. Before Jacob or I could speak, Mr. and Mrs. Hale were already objecting. "Jamie is a Hale," Mrs. Hale said, her voice filled with concern. "There's no need to rush out. We can find you a proper place, get everything settled. Even if you and Jacob aren't married, you're still Jamie's mother. We will support you." But Celine just shook her head, eyes glistening with tears. Too perfect, too deliberate. "That won't be necessary," she said hoarsely. "I never wanted anything from the Hale family. I only stayed these past few days so Jamie could spend some time with his father. Since Mr. Hale and Miss Bennett are getting married soon, it's not appropriate for us to remain here." Her words were modest, but her tone wasn't. It was a performance. Every syllable was meant to sting. And she made sure I was her audience. Jamie looked between his mother and his father, confusion clouding his tiny face. Then, in a small, trembling voice, he said, "Daddy, I don't want to go." The silence that followed was deafening. Celine's face twisted. The gentle mask cracked. She slammed the bowl down so hard that soup splattered across the tablecloth. "What do you think this place is?" she screamed. "A hotel you can stay in just because you want to? Or have you also started to look down on your poor, pathetic mother? Do you want to stay here and enjoy the rich life?" Her words were venom. Jamie's lower lip trembled before he burst into tears. He scrambled off his chair and ran straight into Jacob's arms, sobbing uncontrollably. "You're not my mommy! You're not my mommy! Boo-hoo-hoo!" The sound pierced through me. For a moment, no one moved. Celine stood frozen, face pale, trembling. Then she turned abruptly and left the room. The meal ended in chaos. That night I decided to stay over. Jacob seemed surprised, but there was something in his eyes. A quiet kind of relief, as if my presence steadied him. But I wasn't staying for him. While Celine was locked in her room throwing a tantrum, I quietly led Jamie into the playroom. The boy had stopped crying, though his eyes were still puffy and red. He looked up at me, hesitant, curious. Maybe when I had shielded him earlier, he felt something. A connection. We sat on the carpet, surrounded by blocks and toy cars. "Jamie," I said gently, stacking the blocks into a small tower, "can you tell Auntie Aria why you said that person in the other room isn't your mommy?" He sniffled, rubbing his little eyes. Mommy never used to be mean to me like that. She never hit me. She used to make my favorite snacks and play with my toys and read bedtime stories. But this mommy doesn't do that anymore." Then his voice cracked. "Auntie, have I been a bad boy? So bad that even mommy hates me now?" The question made my chest tighten. I reached out and ruffled his soft hair. "No, sweetheart, you're not bad at all." But something about what he said kept echoing in my mind. "Has mommy been acting strange in any other way lately?" I asked. He thought hard, then nodded. "Yes, mommy got a new ring, and every day she talks to it when she thinks nobody's listening." My pulse quickened. The ring, the image of Selena in the garden flashed through my mind, talking to thin air, complaining about a system. The strange text that sometimes flickered in my vision began to appear again. Holy crap. So the heroine has been replaced by a different soul. No wonder she's completely different. Can we please have the original sweet heroine back? This one is a monster. This plot is insane. I want a refund. The messages faded as quickly as they appeared, leaving me alone in the dimly lit playroom with Jamie, this small, innocent boy who only wanted his mother back. He hugged his knees, eyes glossy with tears. "Auntie," he whispered, "can you help me find my real mommy? I miss her so much." Something in me hardened. People always called me the villainess. Calculating, heartless, obsessed with winning Jacob's love. But at that moment, I understood the truth. I wasn't fighting for Jacob. I was fighting for reality itself. Later that night, Jacob went to Celine's room. His tone was soft, almost apologetic, the kind of voice he'd never used with me before. Celine, overjoyed, didn't notice the bitter irony. She drank the glass of milk he offered her, not realizing it was laced with a sedative. When she finally fell asleep, Jacob and I waited in his study. A few minutes later, the door creaked open. Jamie appeared, clutching something in his small hands. "Daddy, Auntie," he whispered. "This is the one." He held out a ring, a delicate band with a diamond that glowed faintly blue. Jacob quickly dropped it into a degaussing box on his desk. The eerie light flickered, then vanished. A cold shiver ran down my spine. Before either of us could speak, a soft, shimmering glow filled the room, and then a translucent figure appeared. It was her, the real Celine. She knelt beside Jamie, wrapping ghostly arms around him. "My baby," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." Her eyes turned to us. 5 years ago, I found this ring. I was going to turn it in, but it spoke to me. It said it could change my destiny. I wore it, and it took control of my life. It made me follow a script, told me to seduce Mr. Hale. When I refused, it threatened to erase me. It changed my face so that he would see you, Miss Bennett. Jacob's face turned pale. I saw realization and guilt flash across his features. The spirit continued, voice trembling. "I never wanted any of it. I just wanted peace. But when I tried to remove the ring, the system brought in another soul from another world. Someone cruel. She's the one wearing my body now. Please, Miss Bennett, if she ever asks you to go somewhere with her, don't. She'll destroy everything, even Jamie." Her form began to fade. "Please, save my son." Then she was gone. A sharp knocking broke the silence. It was Celine, or rather the other Celine, standing in the doorway, eyes wild, hair disheveled. "Jamie? Jamie, are you in there?" Jacob returned the boy to her. Celine's lips trembled, but her expression softened when she saw him. I thought he had wandered off. "Thank you." But as she turned to leave, the faintest flicker of blue light pulsed under her sleeve, a ghostly shimmer at her wrist where the ring had once been. And deep inside, I knew this wasn't over, not even close. The night after the ring incident, I barely slept. Even though the spirit of the real Celine had disappeared, her warning kept echoing in my mind. If she asks you to go somewhere with her, don't go. I didn't know what scared me more. The thought that another soul truly possessed Celine's body, or that the system she spoke of might still be out there, watching us like pieces in a game. The next morning, everything looked deceptively normal. Jamie was in the living room stacking blocks. Celine, or rather, the thing wearing her face, was smiling as if nothing had happened. When she saw Jacob enter the study, she hurried over, voice honey-sweet. "Of course," Jacob said gently, stroking Jamie's hair. The little boy was a quick thinker. He played along perfectly, just as we'd planned. He yawned and leaned against her shoulder. "Mommy, I had to go potty," he said in his soft little voice. "But I saw you were sleeping and didn't want to wake you. I'm sorry I worried you." Celine relaxed instantly, her body language changing from tension to practiced affection. She patted his bottom with mock scolding. "Don't you ever run off like that again, or I'll leave you behind for good." Jacob's expression darkened. "He's just a child," he said quietly. "You shouldn't frighten him like that." Her eyes flickered with something ugly, but she quickly recovered, smiling, pretending. "You're right," she said softly. "I was just so worried." When she finally left, Jacob closed the door. I stepped in from the balcony, arms crossed. "So," I said, tilting my head, "what's the plan, Mr. Hale?" He rubbed his temples tiredly. "You know how much I hate these kinds of messes. But, no matter what, a child shouldn't lose his mother." I smiled faintly. Funny, I was thinking the exact same thing. We were no longer enemies, not even reluctant allies. We were simply two people standing between a little boy and the chaos that wanted to consume his life. 3 days later, Jacob left for a business trip. Or so Selena thought. In reality, it was part of the plan. I stayed at the Hale residence to watch her, and just as expected, she began to unravel. She searched the entire house for the ring, but found nothing. Her frustration grew by the hour. It confirmed what I'd suspected. She and the system were not allies. The system couldn't read her thoughts anymore. But the real Celine, still trapped deep inside, could. One morning, as I was eating breakfast, she appeared beside me, all sugary smiles. "Miss Bennett," she began sweetly, "Jamie seems to really like you. Thank you for taking care of him these past few days." "Of course," I replied calmly, slicing my toast. "He's Jacob's son, after all. That makes me his stepmother, more or less." A flicker of irritation crossed her face, but she quickly masked it with another bright smile. "That's true. Well, Jamie has been begging to go to the ocean. The weather's beautiful today. Would you like to join us?" The ocean. The warning flashed in my mind like lightning. Still, I smiled back just as sweetly. "Sure," I said. "I'll have my staff prepare the yacht." "Oh, no need for that," she said too quickly. "I've already chartered one. I even had it decorated as a surprise for Jamie. Let's just use mine." There it was, the trap. I didn't flinch. "All right," I said, smiling. "Saves me the trouble." Then, as I turned away, I sent a short text to Jacob. "She's making her move." His reply came instantly. "I'm on my way." Jacob arrived at the marina just in time, seconds before Celine shoved Jamie off the yacht. I didn't think. I dove straight into the freezing water after him. The shock hit me like a slap, but I pushed through the pain, swimming toward the small body sinking below the surface. When I finally reached him, his arms clung to my neck like he'd never let go again. Above us, I heard the roar of the yacht's engine. Celine was trying to turn it, aiming straight for us. But she didn't know how to control the vessel. The roar of jet skis filled the air as Jacob's team intercepted, surrounding her boat. By the time Jacob climbed aboard the rescue vessel, his face was ashen with fury. Celine froze when she saw him, the realization dawning that her plan had failed. But instead of pleading, she smiled, eerie and calm. "If I can't go back to my world, then this body is useless to me," she whispered. And before anyone could stop her, she jumped. The splash was followed by Jamie's terrified scream. "Mommy!" Jacob didn't hesitate. He dove in after her, dragging her back to the surface. When they pulled her from the water, she wasn't breathing. I held Jamie tight as he sobbed into my shoulder. "It's okay," I whispered. "Your mommy is going to be okay." Celine was rushed to the ICU. She'd hit her head on the side of the yacht. The doctors said it was a miracle she survived at all. Jacob didn't leave her side. He called in specialists, hired private nurses, spared no expense. As for me, I stayed behind caring for Jamie. We developed a quiet routine. Meals together, bedtime stories, laughs over spilled juice and broken crayons. Sometimes when he fell asleep beside me, I'd look at his peaceful little face and feel something strange. Something I hadn't felt in years. Warmth. Perhaps this was what redemption looked like. A month later, Celine's condition stabilized. She didn't wake up, but her body no longer fought the machines. The Hales arranged a private hospital suite, and life moved forward, slowly, cautiously. Years passed. Jamie grew taller. His smile came easier. He started elementary school, charming every teacher he met. Jacob and I never did set a wedding date. We didn't need to. The bond between us had already been forged in the fire of everything we'd survived. Still, there was an ache that never quite left. The ache of a story unfinished. One afternoon, 3 years later, I took Jamie to visit Celine after school. He was chattering excitedly about his first week. His new teacher, his friends, the gold star he'd earned for perfect attendance. When he finished, he grabbed Selena's limp hand and held it tight. "Mommy," he said softly, "when are you going to wake up? As long as you're sleeping, my godmother won't marry Daddy. If this keeps up, Daddy's going to die all alone." I gasped, then pinched his ear lightly. "You little rascal, what are you talking about? Your godmother is a career woman." He pouted. "A real career woman can have a man and a career. She can have it all." I was speechless, and Jacob, standing behind us, choked back a laugh. Maybe his words really did reach her. 2 weeks later, the monitors beside Celine's bed began to flicker with stronger signals. She was waking up. And exactly 1 month later, on Jamie's birthday, she opened her eyes. The timing was uncanny, almost poetic. We were all gathered in her room, candles flickering, Jamie wearing a birthday hat far too big for his head. He closed his eyes, made his wish, and blew out the candles. "I wish for Mommy to wake up soon and stay with me forever," he said solemnly. "I wish for Daddy to be brave and find the happiness he deserves. And I wish for my godmother to be rewarded for being a good person, with endless money for this life, and the next, and the one after that." I grabbed him in a playful headlock. "Why is my wish the shallow one?" He wriggled free, laughing, then pushed Jacob toward me. "Well, I tried to give you a man, but you don't want him." Jacob's ears turned slightly pink as he cleared his throat. And that's when I looked up, and met Celine's gaze. She was awake. Tears filled her eyes, but her smile was soft, genuine. In that moment, I knew the real Celine had finally returned, and for the first time in a long time, I felt the story ending not in tragedy or revenge, but peace. The hospital room was filled with the gentle glow of sunlight filtering through the sheer curtains. Jamie's laughter bounced around the room as he proudly showed his mother a messy drawing, stick figures of 4 people holding hands. Above them, in big, uneven letters, he'd written, "Family." Celine's eyes softened as she traced the crayon lines. Her hand trembled slightly, but her smile was radiant. It had been 2 weeks since she woke up, and every day since had been a miracle. "Mommy," Jamie said suddenly, turning serious in that way only a child can be. "Since you're awake now, Godmother Mimi should marry Daddy already." I nearly dropped my teacup. "Jamie!" Jacob, who had been standing by the window, froze mid-step, his ears turning pink. "Buddy, maybe let's talk about—" Celine laughed, a clear, melodic sound that filled the whole room. "He's right, Jacob," she said teasingly. "You've made her wait long enough." Her voice still carried traces of tiredness, but there was warmth and peace there too, the kind that only comes from letting go. Jacob rubbed the back of his neck, still blushing. "Should we get married next month, then?" he asked, glancing shyly in my direction. I grinned, unable to resist. "Next month? Why wait that long? Next week sounds better." Jamie jumped up, clapping his hands. "Yay! Daddy's getting married. Mommy's awake. I get 2 moms now." Even Celine laughed again, eyes glistening with emotion. "If I'd known waking up meant I'd get to see this, I should have done it earlier," she murmured with a watery smile. Jacob leaned forward, kissing her forehead gently. "Welcome back, Celine." She looked at both of us, then at Jamie, who was now pretending to be a ring bearer with his toy cars. "Thank you," she whispered, "for saving me, and for loving him the way you do." I smiled. "We're family, Celine. Always have been. Always will be." 1 week later, the ocean breeze carried laughter and music through the air. White petals danced on the wind, falling softly onto the deck of the yacht. The same yacht where everything had once gone so wrong. This time it was different. This time it was filled with love. Jamie stood proudly in his tiny tuxedo, holding a velvet box with both hands. "I'm the most important person here," he declared, puffing out his chest. Celine, sitting nearby with a silk scarf over her hair and a gentle smile, called out, "Don't drop the rings, Captain Jamie." He giggled, running down the aisle as the music began to play. Jacob's eyes met mine as I walked toward him. Steady, full of warmth and promise. The sun dipped low over the horizon, casting everything in gold. When he took my hand, I felt the years of pain, loss, and healing all blend into something simple and whole. "From the moment I met you," he whispered, voice shaking slightly, "you've been my peace." I smiled through the tears. "And you've been my home." The officiant smiled. "By the power vested in me—" Jamie interrupted loudly. "You can kiss her now, Daddy!" Everyone laughed, even Celine. And when Jacob kissed me, with Jamie cheering and the sea shimmering all around us, I finally felt it. The sense that every heartbreak, every twist of fate, had led us right here. 1 year later, our home was louder than ever. The morning sunlight streamed into the garden where Jamie was running barefoot, chasing bubbles. Celine sat on the patio, sketching, her recovery nearly complete. She had started painting again, bright, hopeful colors that spoke of rebirth. Jacob came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist as I set breakfast on the table. "Mrs. Hale," he murmured against my ear, "you're still the most beautiful chaos I've ever loved." I laughed softly. "And you're still terrible at compliments." He kissed the side of my neck. "Then let me show you instead." Before I could respond, Jamie shouted from the garden, "You! Daddy's being cheesy again!" Celine burst out laughing, calling back, "Let them be, sweetheart. That's what love looks like." I met her gaze across the patio, and for a moment, everything felt perfectly still. We had all walked through fire and found our way back to light, and this time no one was alone. They once called me the villainess, the woman who clung too tightly, loved too fiercely, fought too ruthlessly. But if saving a child, protecting a family, and defying a cursed destiny made me a villain, then I'd play that role again in every life that followed. Because sometimes the only way to defeat the story is to rewrite it yourself.